Member of the New Energy Congress and the co-author of the book Breakthrough Power. The Global Breakthrough Energy Movement is proud to introduce to you Joel Garbon.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming and hearing something about what I have to say today. Now, I have to acknowledge that each of you are very brave to attend a talk that's about testing standards. All right? But I can guarantee you there's a lot more to it than that, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of the entertaining features of this as well. I also want to acknowledge the Global Breakthrough Energy Movement team, Yaron and Robert and their associates. They've done a great job pulling the conference together under very challenging conditions. And it's a real testament to that drive and motivation and desire to serve that so many people have come from all parts of the world to participate in this. Yeah. So thank you all for being here. So don't get fooled again why we need new energy testing standards. I'm the president of an organization called New Energy Movement. And New Energy Movement is a nonprofit public charity that was the brainchild of Dr. Brian O'Leary. In fact, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year. Brian had a lot of experience in founding organizations that were largely technical in nature, where their conferences were largely confined to the technical community. And much of what transpired there never made its way out into the mainstream public. We got together at Brian's invitation, myself and Gene Manning, co-author of our book Breakthrough Power, as well as several other colleagues in the New Energy Movement, and decided that it was time to break this out into the mainstream public. So you didn't have to be a PhD to understand what was going on in this field. So what New Energy Movement's priority is now is to educate the public and policymakers in the investment community about the need for urgent and serious support of breakthrough energy technologies of all kinds. These things are popping up all over the world. And one thing I can tell you is that while a lot of the presentations you'll hear over the next few days will give you some glimpses and hints at what's to come, I can tell you that among our group of colleagues, most all of us have non-disclosure agreements with various inventors who we may not know of each other's confidences as well. But I can tell you for sure there are some very high impact technologies that are very close to prime time, many of which you won't hear about here at the conference. So it's kind of like seeing behind the wizard's curtain and knowing that something's good, that yellow brick road's really leading somewhere. So I just want to let you know that we are full of hope and expectation. So how many of you have heard of this book, Breakthrough Power, perhaps have read it? Oh, great, that's great. Well, Gene Manning was kind enough a few years ago to invite me to collaborate with her in co-authoring this book that's largely based on Gene's 30 years of experience as an investigative journalist in the field of breakthrough energy technologies. And she wanted to incorporate some of my own perspectives and some of my own technical viewpoints and experiences with the inventor community as well. And what we were trying to do again here was to target a book that was comprehensive in its scope, that was geared directly to the mainstream public, as well as those who are in the academic science community. So it's very, very readable and approachable, and I hope those of you who maybe aren't so technical and inclined in the science realms, that you've found it, that it's very approachable and something you can pass off to your friends and family and neighbors. So what about this field of new energy? I mean, why should we even really care about this? Is there something so pressing on our planet that we should galvanize a lot of action around the world from citizens like all of you to travel and come to hear these various people, many of them strangers to you, hear what they have to say? Well, I'd suggest anyone who follows the news of what's happening on our planet could make a case that really the red flags have been going up for quite some time. Whether it's in the environmental degradation of our planet, or a lot of the socioeconomic challenges, or the resource wars, all these things. I mean, we have a huge laundry list of pressing global issues. And many of these things can feel so overwhelming that the citizen response is to just go, I can't handle it. And all I want to do is just think about something else because it feels like I can't do anything. Too overwhelming. But, you know, each of us has a role to play in this. It's interesting, I had a conversation last night with a lovely couple who joined me for dinner, who I'd not met before, but they were very, very interesting. And they made some comment about, we're really looking forward to hearing some of the presentations by these very important people. And my immediate response to that was wait a second here. Everyone here is important to this. Some have varying roles that might be more visible and more public, but I can guarantee you that it is the mainstream energy coming from citizens at large around the planet that will make this happen. That's the only way it's going to happen. So we all have to come into this together. We're all equally important in this. So New Energy Movement has the motto that the most highly leveraged opportunity to solve these complex global problems, especially from the physical standpoint, is through the way they're basically changing the way we generate and utilize energy. Now there's definitely a consciousness aspect to this as well, and many others have spoken of that. It is woven through the New Energy Movement itself and the people who are at its core. We all are part of the consciousness community as well. Myself, a scientist who happens to have a deep, profound faith in a benevolent and loving creator, and how that affects me and drives me toward wanting to be of service is something that I know many of you share and is not at all incompatible with being a man of science. So we do have solutions that are coming down the road, and we're all here to accelerate those. But one of the things that we've found along the way is that there's an awful lot of claims that are out there for various technologies that have been incredibly difficult to sort through. And I think that we've got a real opportunity to change that scenario. So one of the things that with a dry kind of topic like new energy testing standards, it's good to find a blossoming young artist or middle-aged artist who thought he'd put a few things in here to help make this a little, well, let's say a little more interesting of a presentation. Not too long ago, a few years ago, there was one of our colleagues, a journalist, who had been following a supposed magnetic motor technology that had some seemingly profound aspects to it. And this supposed inventor had released a lot of YouTube videos. And there was a lot of buzz that was created around that particular technology. And a lot of people were following this over quite a period of time. It's getting a lot of people excited. But then there was a very astute video analyst who did some high resolution analysis of one of those videos and saw that actually this magnetic motor, supposed magnetic motor, was being powered by a fishing line that was essentially being reeled in from somewhere off screen. And that had, you know, quite a few people fooled for some time. So, and those who took the bait were heavily embarrassed. But from a larger standpoint, this hurt the credibility of the new energy field and wasted a lot of time. So here was one of these imposters who really perpetrated a fraud, and it just really was sad. But it sharpened the new energy field to become more vigilant. And we started to think about what can we do to help winnow out some of these supposed technologies that really do not merit any attention at all. But how would you test a battery that's powered by urine? Does that seem ridiculous? Well, I can tell you I have a very close relationship with an inventor who actually developed a urine battery. And his name is Nelson Camus. He's from Chile. And in 1992, Nelson won the Best of Show at the Pasadena, California Inventor Expo. And he was on all the mainstream evening news that night who were profiling his invention. And I've seen it. In fact, I actually have the video transcript of all of those major networks. So this was a real thing. And Nelson went on to do a licensing agreement with one of the major oil companies who all of you would recognize. He had a 10-year license for $5 million, and they were supposedly going to develop this for electric vehicle applications. And of course, it never saw the light of day after that. And like most inventors, he plowed those funds into more inventing. And he's on to some other things at this point. So this was very real. And there are clearly a lot of very interesting things that, aspects of the human physiology have related to energy and other things. In fact, I would say even in the healing arts, this particular component of our physiology has some great pertinence. In fact, I challenge you to go Google urine therapy and see what you find there. Well, any of you who have done much perusing of the videos that are all over the internet with supposed new energy technologies can find, with a simple search like water as fuel, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. I mean, it's just totally overwhelming, and no one can possibly look through all these. And certainly in my own case, very busy life, both in my mainstream job that feeds my family, and then also in my philanthropy with New Energy Movement, there's just not a lot of time to go through all these. But the other thing that you find is it's very hard to tell just from a video on YouTube whether something is real or whether it's meritless. And there's a tremendous array of new energy technologies. Jean Manning had put together this classification from the research she'd done over 30 years, and you can see there's all kinds of novel approaches and technologies. Most of the inventors who are behind these things, we have contacts with of various sorts between our group of colleagues here. Here's a whole nother set, and it's just amazing. You can see, like at the cavitation technologies, we're going to hear something from Mark Leclerc of Nanospire, who's going to Skype in at a later presentation. But there's all kinds of technologies there. It's very hard to get one's arms around all of these things, much less be able to vet them and establish their credibility. I have an inventor contact in the city of Portland, where I live, who has a very interesting technology that uses what he calls a plasma spark. And essentially, it overlays a novel circuit on a standard ignition circuit and has the appearance of being able to directly burn water as a fuel. Just like your spark plug can combust gasoline in your internal combustion engine, I have seen this experiment, this proof of principle experiment, dozens of times, including in my own kitchen. And it is very, very compelling, and there's some very interesting anomalous aspects of this. But it's very hard to determine what really is happening in here. And I do not personally have the expertise to do that. But part of what I'm talking about here in needing standardized testing protocols for breakthrough energy technologies is to be able to bring those to bear on technologies like this that truly might be disruptive. And I have this video available. It's a short clip. I'm not showing it in this presentation, but others who have interest, just tap me on the shoulder sometime during the next few days, and I'd be happy to show it to you. So the skeptical community is generally taking this approach. All inventor claims of free energy are bogus. Now, being a scientist myself, that smacks of dogma that really is unfounded coming from a person of science. I think it's much more appropriate to take a neutral position on that, especially when one has not yet investigated the data. Because we hear a lot of skeptics out there making such comments as this without really digging in. And I think Ruby Carrot in her presentation earlier on the whole cold fusion field really points that out very well. There were a lot of premature proclamations made from the science community without really having done their homework on the full body of evidence. Now, the vast majority of inventor claims, it is true, do not hold up to rigorous and intense technical scrutiny. And that's why so many of these videos that propagate the internet really aren't worth the time viewing. I mean, they're interesting. And it's not that the inventors themselves aren't possibly onto something or that their own imagination and creativity is being tapped, which is a great thing. But it doesn't really mean that you should get all excited about it or financially support it. You know, there's other parallels here as far as you know, making claims that you know, may not be true here. So I would say that there's really not, maybe there's not a cold day in hell, but if there is, I hope that they have good IPAs served down there. So why is this? Why are the vast majority of these performance claims really not worth the time and interest? Well, first is that often we find that there's an inadequate understanding of science on the standpoint of the inventor. And that generally is innocent. And you know, there's an awful lot of wealth and knowledge out there that could be brought to bear on technologies that would point this out to the inventor. But that's something that has to more be a lesson or something where the inventor's own study comes into play here. Because the new energy vetting community itself, which still is relatively small, can't go and basically handhold everyone through this. What would make a lot more sense is to have standardized testing protocols that the inventor has to apply himself to basically get to the hurdle of saying, hey, now I'm ready for the next step, which is a third-party vetting using those same protocols. So after an inadequate understanding of science, then there's the part about using inappropriate testing equipment and maybe inappropriate testing methodology. And so, you know, this is something that, again, we've seen a number of times where we're really not, you know, the right instrument is not being applied based on the energy effects that are being exhibited by the technology. Another one is the misinterpretation of the testing data itself. A lot of times it can be a bit misleading, the results that are gained by the inventor's measurements on his own device versus what that really translates to in you know, real terms. Now, certainly most of the inventors that I've met are honest and well-intentioned people. They are good-hearted. They have a true desire to serve and to come up with something that's going to help transform the way we've gone about this planet for so many decades. And I applaud them in their efforts. And many of them are very wise and humble as well, as far as being able to accept criticism that suggests that their baby technology might not be the most beautiful. And they're willing to rework and relearn. And my hat's off to those who are willing to do that. You know, I think that there's an awful lot to be said for the fact that so many in this field really are great, well-intentioned people. Now, Gene, I know on Santa's list that you definitely rank very high on the nice scale. So, and if any of you have not met Jean Manning, you should do so because you'll find one of the finest women on this planet. Now, there are also some inventors who are not so highly motivated and not so much from the standpoint of service, but they're really intending to propagate fraud and to deceive. And that's been a shame because, again, it's wasted so much time. Just like, we saw in the earlier example with the fishing line, supposed magnetic motor. In each of these cases, the credibility of the whole new energy field becomes further diminished. And that hurts us all. I mean, I've been in this field now for some 12 years. As I mentioned, Gene for nearly 30, Tom Vallone for at least 30, and many, many others. So there's centuries worth of time and investment of resources and passion trying to help move this thing to the point where it has a great social benefit and a healing effect on this planet. So when we see these kind of stumbling blocks along the way, it's really been sad to watch the credibility of the field be impacted. And then right where the rubber meets the road as far as the financial aspect here, the result has been that we see a new energy device comes into the scene and the investment dollars scurry away. Now, why is that? It's because most investors who have large sums to invest, they have technical advisors that they rely on. Oftentimes, those technical advisors are coming from a mainstream science discipline, and in order to protect their own credibility, they're going to be very, very conservative in their recommendations because they don't want to send their client on a wild goose chase that ends up costing them a lot of money. And so everyone has a little vested interest in there. And I can't blame them. I mean, I'm an inventor myself, not in the energy field, but in the water treatment field. And I know it takes a long time to go from the point of the back of the napkin idea on through the research and development, the patenting, the licensing, and hopefully end up with a product that actually has real market value. And I've gone through all of that, even to the point of an acquisition of the technology by a much larger corporation. So these things do not happen by themselves. It's a slow, gradual process with a lot of disciplines along the way, a lot of people with their own individual talents and skills that have to be brought to bear on these. And no inventor or small, isolated team can do that by themselves. They need real resources and real talented people who can be trusted and who are going to perform. So we've found, as Ruby pointed out in her presentation, that the academic and science communities have remained wary and very skeptical of the new energy claims. And in cold fusion in particular, we've seen some of those who portray themselves as the lords of science because they're coming from a highly recognized, reputable academic institution, and maybe have been a bit too quick in making pronouncements, such as that cold fusion is junk science. But from the standpoint of seeing how often the inventor claims have been invalid, it's not surprising that's been the general approach and perspective from the science community. So how do we turn this whole scene around? Well, we started discussing this at last year's Breakthrough Energy Movement conference in the Netherlands. And I had come away from that conference thinking, someone's got to start putting some pen to paper on this to start constructing a framework for how we might do this. And these were some of the things that have now come about here. So the first idea is that we established rigorous protocols for assessment of breakthrough energy technologies to be able to validate the performance claims. Then we open source those testing standards to the new energy research community, the investment community, and the vetting community. So now everyone is using the same songbook. Now, when I essentially was doing my own kind of market survey among a lot of highly credentialed engineers and scientists as far as this whole premise, well, the valuable feedback was, hey, that sounds like a really good idea. We do need this. Sounds like a lot of work. Doesn't sound very exciting. which, guess what? Having worked on various protocol development committees in the water treatment field over the last 4 years or so, including for the state of New Jersey and the Environmental Technology Verification Program of the country of Canada, I can tell you that it's not exciting work, especially when you're doing it on a volunteer basis. When you're a volunteer, it takes a lot of time when you're bringing together a committee of people to try to establish these test standards. It's one of these like mundane things that are behind the scenes. No one knows, you know, or really cares about this because it's just like blah, what a dry thing to do. But like so many things that power our society, it's the little things that are laying that foundation for the next layer to where you finally have this whiz-bang something that you're interested in buying. You have an iPhone, guess what? All this boring code that gets developed and entered to make one of those devices be what they are. Who's interested in that from the mainstream public? Hardly anybody, you know, unless you're really into that stuff. But people sure like what it does. Well, so who's going to do this? Well, it's probably not going to be someone like this who would rather have, you know, just kind of a day in the sun and leave the heavy lifting to someone else. But fortunately, we have identified some people who will do this. And what they will do is they'll come together as a technical committee and subcommittees comprised of experienced and respected professionals from the engineering and science disciplines. And some of the comments that have come back from those who've been contacted on this have been very, very positive and encouraging. Like, hey, sounds great, I want to help, but I don't have the time to volunteer. And I fully understand that for the reasons I just described. You know, I've put in hundreds and hundreds of hours as a volunteer in helping to develop testing protocols for the water treatment field. And it's not fun work, it's not easy. And when you're a volunteer, you're not getting paid for that. You know, fortunately, there's people who want to serve because this is what's helping to preserve our environment. And with the pressing problems in the water field, the water pollution issues, and that someone's got to do that lifting. All right, well, I'd like to see people step forward in this realm as well. But I'm not asking them to volunteer because having some real funding available that can compensate these people to be on the committee and develop the protocols and put them in a nice compilation that's convenient and available to all through open sourcing, this will happen much, much faster if we can provide them some compensation. I can guarantee you that. And that is the feedback that I got from virtually everyone, to a man or a woman who I had posed the question to. They're like, yeah, you know, if we were, you know, paid something, you know, that would, you know, raise it up on the priority scale. And I fully respect that and understand that. Well, what would the scope of work entail here? Well, it'd be developing some technical assessment protocols for accurately measuring the various common input-output forms of energy. And these would include electrical, magnetic, thermal, mechanical, chemical, and nuclear. So it's pretty wide range, but what we often find here in the new energy field is that any given technology is a hybrid in that it has an input of one form and output of a different form, or an input of one form and it has 2 or 3 different outputs. You look at the cold fusion field, you know, generally we're looking at some type of electrical input, and we're looking at some type of chemical effect, perhaps, or perhaps a nuclear effect, and we're seeing definitely a thermal output. And maybe something else. Maybe, you know, with the, you know, neutron release in some cases, with some technologies, not all of them. There may be other types of energetic effects as well. But hardly any of these are simply classed as just, well, electrical or magnetic in, electrical out. It's almost always some combination of these. So we need to cover these bases. Also in the scope of work, these individual protocols for those individual energy input-output effects, these would be compiled into a single written document as an easy and comprehensive reference. Now that's something that I think would have great appeal to a lot of people, because a lot of time is wasted when you're simply researching on how are people testing these things. You go to a university lab over here with the same device, you see how they're testing it. You go to a different university lab, they're using a different methodology, different instrumentation. Everyone has their nuanced way of going about this. It's not apples to apples. The cold fusion research shows that beyond anything else. We have dozens and dozens of highly qualified vetting teams from highly respected institutions who've looked at this, but not using the same set of protocols. And it results in data all over the map that takes years to figure out what's really going on and to sort out whether an effect was real or not. So having some good comprehensive and well agreed upon protocol of the latest and best and rigorous analytical techniques would be very welcome here. Also in the scope of work, very important and very unique would be to include a section called Common Errors that draws upon the actual experience of people who've been in the vetting communities and have debunked many of these performance claims of supposed new energy technologies. We have one colleague, Mark Dancy, who's going to be Skyped in at a later presentation. And Mark has looked at it by his own estimate, over 100 claims of breakthrough energy technologies. And he said, well over 90 to 95% of those were just a total waste of time. Yet he's flown around the world seeing all these, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that, and many of the other people associated with their time and resources, and it bore no fruit. All right. So what did happen though is a vast experiential brain trust of these people who've had these debunking experiences that can be brought together as a compendium, put as an appendix in a document like this, so that the vetting, well, not only the vetting entities, but the researchers and inventors themselves can check their own device against these common errors. And that will winnow out so much of this. There also is a need for a protocol development coordinator. There always has to be someone who's kind of like, leading the pack and making sure that things are getting done, stay on track and all that. Not necessarily having to weigh in on any of the technical aspects of it, but basically providing guidance along the way and having the information funneled and kind of being in control of the process to keep it on track and on time. Expediting things. So basically that person would oversee or basically have reporting come from the chairman of the committee and probably the subcommittee chairman, just to make sure everything is staying on track. And then when ready, that coordinator would release that finished document out through various channels to get this widely disseminated into the new energy community. So the inventors who would actually use those protocols to establish their technical performance claims would definitely enhance their credibility. The other thing that would happen is that they would find that they're in the catbird seat as far as attracting the professional and financial resources to help marshal along their technologies. Right now, most of these inventors who have real technologies of merit are being lost in this whole sea of junk, because there's a lot of dogs out there, among the really good, good and meriting technologies. Now, the vetting professionals themselves would use the exact same protocols to test the device that the inventors had to use to establish their performance claim. And so when that third-party stamp of approval, boom, verified, gets put on this, guess what? Now the investment community has a high degree of confidence. So those investors end up seeing that third-party verification is essentially a seal of approval. Now they're willing to open up the bank and start supporting these things because their confidence is so high that this is real. and we're supporting. Right now, there's just way too much chaff out there to give anyone much confidence. And you know, there is some good solid vetting that is done here and there definitely are some high-performing technologies that are real and that are going to be coming out. But those tend to be, you know, relatively isolated, and there's not much buzz around them because it's all being done under non-disclosure, and generally you may not even be aware of them at a conference like this. Well, what are the expected outcomes? First is a vast reduction in the proliferation of these meritless technologies and all the associated inaccurate performance claims. And that means that there'll be a tremendous conservation of time and finances and the resources that have been expended by both the researcher and inventor communities, the vetting entities as well, and the financial folks. Also, there'll be a much smaller, more concentrated stream of technologies of merit that do become visible. So everyone's attention can be focused on really the vein of gold that's in the mountain. Right now, everyone's just been kind of like burrowing holes in the mountain. And I know what that's like because I've been in the gold mining business for a little bit. And do a lot of core drilling before you find the vein, hopefully. This way, you go right to the vein. So the end result is that there'd be a much faster entry of valuable breakthrough energy technologies into the marketplace and public domain. And that really is why we're here, because having that outcome means now we could start doing the remediation of our environment. We could start to equalize some of the whole resource depletion issue that's been going on this planet, bring it down to a much, much lower, more sustainable level, and start to make those changes in our society that unleash the human creativity to an unprecedented level. And that's just the possibilities are endless once we get to that point. Now, what's a potential real cost to something like this? $50,000. Plus or minus what, Joel? I don't know. 25,000, perhaps. You know, could it go to 100,000? Hard to say, but I think around that number, 50,000, gets us a really good starting point for this, because we can attract and compensate really qualified people who will be proud to have their names on that document, because they will be right up there up front as far as the contributors to the standard protocols. And so, you know, they're going to be accountable for, you know, what they decided as a group to put in that thing. But I think that this is something that is going to be a pivotal document. And in fact, while it won't be something that will be a bestseller read, it'll be one of those things that has great, great impact. And those who know the role that it played in helping us get to the new energy era will say, hey, job well done, folks. New energy movement could be an organization that spearheads this project. It's why I brought this forward initially, was to say, look, if the funding is available, you know, we can start moving this ahead. We've made the contacts, the initial contacts, but we're not locked into doing this. Anyone who is really passionate about this, wants to do this in the right way, and wants to take the time and dig in, make sure the resources are brought to bear, get the right people, hey, go at it. You know, happy to give you all my support and all the contacts I've had on that. The important thing is that the work gets done. So I ask you to get involved somehow. You know, read the Breakthrough Power book. If much of what I'm talking about here in the new energy field is a little bit fuzzy, maybe you've heard a little bit about it, you want to learn more, the Breakthrough Power book's a great primer for understanding what's been going on behind the scenes and what the implications are for all of us, because we're all stakeholders in how this game plays out. You could volunteer to organize events. You know, you can provide support, nonprofit, tax-deductible funding support, help us connect with benefactors, and basically spread the word. Might do something locally, and it's always cool when we see these little groups spring up, start to energize the local new energy community. So just in closing, I want to encourage all of you to continue to hold that vision that something magical and beautiful awaits us. We just stay the course, recruit more of our circle into this, and charge this up with our personal energy. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, but how fast is really up to all of us. If any of you'd like to get a hold of me, here's my contact information. And I'm hopeful that we have a little bit of time for questions. How are we doing? We've got 10 minutes? Yep. Oh, great. Okay. Would love to handle any questions. Yes, sir.
Are there any investors already that have stepped up to put forth this new committee?
No.
Okay.
No. There's some who have spoken about, I have an interest, but as far as actually, sure, sending the check, not yet.
Okay.
But the way a lot of funding efforts go, if someone wants to be first, then everyone wants to be second. So yeah, that's just kind of the human nature. Yes, sir.
Yeah, as I listened to your presentation, I've heard this material several times. I think it's imperative. I think you really need to do this. And I'm impatient. I don't want to wait for the money. I've got a lot of volunteers. Do you think, what would happen if we just started, one step at a time, creating pages on here's how to validate a magnet motor, here's how to validate fusion technology, and just get the kind of an open source public input? Could you speak to the merits of that approach?
Okay, because the questions may not be heard on the live stream and the recording. In a nutshell, the question is about can we start moving on the protocol development now rather than waiting for funding for professional committees to do this work and kind of get a head start that way. Now, my own personal opinion is that that will actually end up in some redundant effort that will be the non-professional development will end up being put aside in favor of this, very high-level, best-in-class type of document that comes out of this. And I speak to my own experience as having served on a number of protocol development committees. It's better to have the professionals there meeting directly, because I can tell you, this spirals out of control. The editing alone that goes on in protocol development is just so time-consuming. So I really would encourage, maintaining the discipline of what's been outlined here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it just seems like money is a very big thing, it's a necessary thing. And I'd just like to point out that the internet was a basic game changer for new energy, and that if you have listservs with 100,000 people, and they have recurrent deductions from their credit card accounts, say $5 a month, that's $500,000 a month. And that particular thing is a little bit different from a crowdfunding or thing where you use it for specific projects, but it would be an ongoing thing. That might be a way to operate. And of course, a wealthy angel investor would be also good, but that's the way that you can get started right now, is getting more and more names on listserv net, sending out about the latest events, the latest discoveries, and encouraging people to set up an account where $5 a month or more, ideally, would come out of their account, and you would get a lot of money that way eventually. There are charities that do that. The AHA Foundation, for example, that I'm a member of, to help women that are being subjugated and so on. It works very well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Good idea. There's certainly various funding models that could be applied to this, and I'd encourage anyone who has a good idea on that. Hey, everyone's fully empowered to do this as their own effort and bring it in. And you bring it into New Energy Movement or anyone else who's basically stepped forward to say, hey, we'll take this on and make it happen. Yes.
I was wondering if there was a sympathetic academic from an engineering graduate studies college or university, that they could maybe set up a course and draw graduate students with this professor and somehow get started with some type of analysis of what's needed by using students.
Yes, the answer to that question is I have contacted some of the academics on this, and there's interest, in student participation. I think one resource that should be readily tapped for this, is the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineers, IEEE. Okay, that is the largest membership-based technical organization on this planet, bar none. And it's stocked full of electrical engineers, many of whom have great experience as far as measurements and standards and testings. In fact, inside IEEE, there's a testing and standards committee. Now, I don't know them personally, but certainly there are those who do belong to that organization and know how to navigate that. I mean, my assumption is that so many of these applicable test protocols already exist. It's a matter of just having those who are most familiar with them to come together, agree on them, and start, putting them in the cookbook. And let's move that thing along. So this could happen very, very quickly if we get the team together, we get some funding to it, and just make it a really nice professional effort and get it out there. And let the ones who put it together get the credit. So I don't care if the project coordinator or whatever gets any credit or not. People are doing the work of putting it together. Let their names be on that, and away you go. And that's great. Yes, sir.
Have you written this up?
Yes. Yes, I do. I have not yet put it on the New Energy Movement website. In some ways, this has been a test market of the idea here. So, I mean, just kind of in general, are people favorable to the premise? Okay. Well, that's very encouraging. I will make available the document that's been written so far on this, and which, by the way, it does include the actual structure of the test standards itself, kind of like the outline of how they would follow. So it's kind of like get it together, fill in the blanks, and man, let's release it and make it happen.
I would like to refer to you on that. I have several people.
I accept.
But the only thing I would say is that $50,000 is a joke.
It's on the low side.
I think that you got to come way up and have a use of proceeds of really how this is going to go. You're going to have travel money.
Yes. But here's why 50,000 is on the low side, but it's not a joke. Because I currently serve on international protocol development committees for water treatment, which aside from energy, that's water is the biggest deal going on. And those are voluntary committees. So what we're trying to do is fast track this. 50,000 is no joke, but it'd be nice if there was 500,000. You're just going to attract that many more people who can make this happen faster. And I do definitely accept your invitation to be part of this. Yes.
I really applaud this proposal. Excellent. And I hope that there would be people included on the committees who are knowledgeable about the exotic energy technologies, because some of these inventors say that they're working with what they call, Tesla called radiant energy, and it's not moving electrons. And so when the engineers come along with their standard testing instruments, they don't find anything happening because there's something different going on. So I hope that it would be ensured that people would be included in the committee who understand these things.
That is a great point, Jean. That is a great point. And part of what I did not mention here, but is part of the written protocol, is that when there are anomalous aspects of the new discovery, that the inventor has the prerogative to propose the protocol, the test protocol, to measure that. And that should be judged fairly by this committee. And so the selection process for who would be on those committees would definitely bear in mind, are these real scientists, fair-minded, not dogmatic folks who have vested interests in this whole thing, but who really are men and women of science and have an open mind to this. But allowing the inventor to say, okay, there is no existing protocol, there's nothing you can find out there in the public domain. I'm going to propose my own because this is why I think I can show mine works. Well, heck, they should be the first one with input, right? And that actually may stimulate some other things. And the cold fusion field has gone through this, right? Because there's been in that field so much discussion about, well, you didn't do that right. You've done this, you've done that, and calorimetry this way, and la-di-la. Okay, so let's get it on. Sure, I think crowdfunding would be a great way of going about this. Yes? Did you have a question?
Oh, I did, yes. I seem to be really good at volunteering other people, but I was thinking the makers of test equipment, maybe if you could say, well, we'd like to use your equipment, and would you be interested in supporting this? Obviously, not everybody would be sympathetic, but there is certainly National Instruments who has been fully supportive in the cold fusion field and might go for something like this to develop some type of standards, protocols using their test equipment.
That's a great idea, and I'll add to that. After I had an interview on Coast to Coast AM back in March. And right after that program, I had the chairman of 2 international vetting organizations, private, corporations, who contacted me directly and said, "This is very interesting, and we'd like to help. In fact, we'd be willing to support this in various ways." And I said, "Thank you. And as we get this thing developed a little more, I will definitely come back." The time was not right to tap into those offers, but I hope it will be sometime soon. So yeah, great comment.
I just want to add to what Kenny said, and that is, with going to like National Instruments, they have shown definite interest in outside-the-box technologies. We should hone in like a laser on them and have them finance this as advertisement and potential future sales of their equipment as the sponsors of this initiative. That'd be a great marriage. And I also, if you don't mind, Joel, want to bring to their attention the fact that right now you're very busy because your patents have been bought by a very large company and they need all your attention right now. So this initiative needs somebody with your abilities, but who has time right now. And so if somebody else is able to step into what you're saying, you could be an advisor. I just want to bring people's awareness to the fact that you're not presently in the position of spearheading this. Could you speak to that for a second?
Yeah, I think that is a fair statement. New Energy Movement is a volunteer organization at this point. Our staff is not compensated. Virtually all of us have full-time day jobs that support our families, and then we provide our philanthropy of time and dedicated service to move things forward as best we can in the in-between time. So I'm taking my vacation time from work here these couple of days to be here to do this, and there's nowhere else I'd rather be. But Sterling, you are right in that I have a full-time day job that's very demanding, and I'd like to be involved and spearhead if possible, but certainly I'm not beholden to that. If there's others who are more qualified, and certainly there are, just stand up and step forward and we'll help, and I'll help you in any way to make this thing happen quickly. But thank you for bringing that up, Sterling, because a lot of people approach us and assume that we are full-time, paid staff and all that, and we're not. We operate on fumes of funding generally, but I like to think that we do an awful lot with what we've got. And you're welcome to uplift the funding as well for New Energy Movement.
Comment about this. I applaud your effort. I think what you're describing really needs to be done. It strikes me that in the new energy field, there are several technologies that could do with testing, but there's a larger range of technologies that aren't ready for testing yet, that really are in the developmental stage. The inventors have seen aspects of it work, but it's not ready for a rigorous protocol. And these ones really need to be nurtured rather than tested.
And that's true, and that should not stop. But that nurturing should be going on with the local contacts of the inventor. That's the friends and family, that's the first circle. That should come around any technology. But what's been happening, unfortunately, is a lot of extravagant performance claims have been propagated that have brought a lot of attention and time and material resources that ended up being totally wasted. And I want to just see an end to that, because I've invested a lot of my time in that too, and I've seen my colleagues put their time and reputation on the lines here and have come under heavy criticism at times because they wanted to believe things on face value, and things did not pan out in several times on end. And it's just like it's time to be done and move forward. So the nurturing of the infant stages, the incubation stages of an idea, those are totally valid and should go on. I'm really talking about something a little bit different. I'm talking about a stage to definitely identify something that's real and ready for support toward the market.
So there have been testing labs such as Earth Tech International, which have not really been very successful. At the University of Colorado, I'm planning, and actually I'm engaged in developing some of these technologies, but more in this way of nurturing them rather than testing them. Just
Great.
Because it seems to me that a lot of these need that.
Thank you for doing that too. That's a great service you're providing. Well, I think that wraps up our presentation here. Thank you so much for your attention, and please spread the word on this. And those of you who would like to see the plasma spark video, feel free to contact me on that. But thank you all very much.